saw when Bruce Hart had brought back Stampede Wrestling. And so the first show that I went to, I was 6 years old. My parents took me, and it was Owen Hart and Mucken Singh in the main event that night. And Mucken Singh would later go on to be Bastion Booger in
Mm-hmm.
WWE. He
Mm-hmm.
he was like, but like at the time in Stampede Wrestling, he was like the top heel. It was Mucken Singh and Karachi Vice were the like the big heel stable in Stampede Wrestling at the time. So I got into shows like in Calgary, and then WWE would come from time to time, and we'd see like the Hart Foundation versus the British Bulldogs, and that was really cool to me to see like the Hearts came out like on a Calgary house show with Calgary Flames jerseys on, and being like a 6 year old kid in Calgary, like hockey and wrestling is everything. So when they combined that, I was like, wrestling is awesome. And eventually, my family moved to Toronto, and I would see some of the shows from Maple Leaf Gardens, which was really fun and really special. And that's how my fandom started, and I've just never wavered. I've loved wrestling ever since.
So, are you following the hockey playoffs pretty closely right now?
Yeah, well, so the Leafs got eliminated by Tampa Bay, which I was a little upset about. But I mean, real hockey fans are loving what's happening in Alberta right now because you have the Battle of Alberta between the Calgary Flames and the Edmonton Oilers. So that's really exciting for a lot of hockey fans.
All right,
But
so
I know
let's talk. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I know we have to get some series out of the way. Like the Avalanche have to beat the Blues soon, or otherwise Rampage is airing at like in the middle of the afternoon.
Yeah, we'll
So I'm
talk. We'll
cheering for
talk
the
to
Avalanche, so that doesn't happen.
we'll talk to Dave about that when he joins us. Okay, so your current wrestling. So you talked about as a kid, like
Hmm.
what kept you following wrestling? Because I think this is a fascinating question. Because I imagine, when we are younger, our friends are kind of into it, but at a certain point, a lot of people fall off. What kept you being a fan, and what kept you sticking around with pro wrestling until current day today?
Well, there was a time where I almost fell out of it a little bit, and it would have been around 2006 after they brought back ECW and then killed it a second time.
Mm-hmm.
That my fandom wavered a little bit there, but in terms of like why I've continued to stay a fan for so many years, like 35 years now, it's just like wrestling is this mix of sports and like movies, and it's just got everything. But I think it's because I have so many positive memories of going to shows. Like it just seems like going to a wrestling show, you're surrounded by other people who like this kind of weird art form. Like wrestling is a strange thing, but people like to be around other people that really love it as much as you do, and you get to discuss it with them. You get to talk about what you like, what you don't like. It's an interesting community in the wrestling fandom world as well, and I think that's maybe what's always kind of kept me into it. But I was
Yeah,
always that friend in my social circle who knew more about wrestling than everybody else. So they would come to me about, because back in the day when dirt sheets and websites and all these things, like they weren't as readily accessible. But my friends would come to me to find out what was going on in the world of wrestling. So I always enjoyed that as well.
I've mentioned this before, but without the Observer, I probably fall off as a wrestling fan right around 93, 94. But
Hmm.
Dave was writing for the National, which was a sports newspaper, and so I got a little bit of a taste of his stuff in that newspaper. But so in like 93 and 94, it's starting to become really silly to me. I'm sort of growing out of
Yeah.
it. But then Hogan goes to WCW, so that kind of reinvigorates me a little bit. But
Hmm.
96, 97, 98, when I finally realize what Dave is doing, that's when I get sucked back in. And then, obviously, great era, Austin Rock, those guys, Foley, that kept me there. But if not for the Observer, I probably would have jumped completely out of it like around 03, 04 again.
Hmm.
But because I was such a big fan of Dave's, and because of this community, because this community began in '05, I believe, it kind of is what kept me here. And I am still here after all of these years, thanks to Dave, and thanks to this website, and all of that. So
Yeah. I love the newsletter, and I've loved the newsletter for I don't even know how long now, but my favorite thing about it is just how thorough everything is. Like Dave does not leave anything out. If you read the, one issue of the Observer, every single word of it, you know everything that happened in wrestling that week. And I do think that like being able to keep track of promotions that maybe you're not able to see all the time, and being able to keep track of what's going on in, say, like Pro Wrestling Noah, I don't get to see a lot, but there's always a section in the newsletter where you can find out what's going on in Pro Wrestling Noah. So yeah, I bet the newsletter has kept a lot of people fans of wrestling when maybe they wouldn't have stayed fans otherwise.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I started to see a different aspect of it, which is Dave will tell you he is a business reporter. That is his trade.
Yeah,
And when you
yeah,
start looking at it from the standpoint of business, like if the like, there are so many moments where I'd be watching WWE and just be like, why am I watching this? Like, there's no reason for me to be watching this. But because the business aspect of it, I was intrigued about, okay, so what does this mean for business? What does this
yeah,
horrendous
yeah,
television that I'm watching mean for business? Where are the stars? How are they going to build the next stars? Where's the TV money going? And so all of these things, I started to get more into that because I'm also a fan of that stuff in other
yeah,
sports,
yeah.
and so that really, really dialed me back in. And I'm almost more interested in that stuff today than the in ring, because you can watch a good you can literally turn to anything wrestling related and find a good wrestling match in the ring. So we're
Hmm.
sort of spoiled in that way. But the business stuff is kind of what I'm even more interested in.
Yeah, what got me more into the business side of things was after ECW closed down. I think maybe I just wanted to make sure that other promotions weren't about to go belly up. And so you learn about, like, okay, the TV rights deals and the ratings and
Yeah.
things like that. And again, the newsletter is just so thorough on everything, especially the section that goes into the television ratings. Um, it's just so great to be able to follow everything that's really happening in the industry aside from just the shows.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Okay, so you told me that you are kind of interested in some of these betting odds for Double or Nothing. And when Dave comes on, we'll do a
Yeah.
little bit of a preview of some of the matches that everyone is looking forward to. But when you look at the odds, so if people want to check them out, they were in yesterday's daily update on the website. Is there anything that stands out to you that is interesting based on what you see in the odds here?
Yes, definitely. So I think a lot of people have said this, and you mentioned this on your show last week, or one of the shows, that this is one of the first AEW World Championship matches where the winner is kind of in doubt. Like you're not exactly sure. Like maybe probably CM Punk is going to win it, and so is it. Like I think CM Punk is going to win it, but I'm
I think
not
Tony
sure.
Khan. I think Tony Khan definitely wants us to think Punk is winning this match, right?
Yeah, he might not though. I mean,
Yeah,
there's
he
so
may
many
not.
different scenarios that could happen. So they've got Punk listed as a minus 150 favorite.
Hmm.
And I think if I was to have gone into this blind and said, like, okay, what odds would I put on it? I would have put Punk at like maybe a minus 200, maybe even a minus 300.
Hmm.
But like minus 150, I mean, that's in the toss up area, right? And then so you start to think, well, what are the different scenarios that could happen? So you've got two very popular wrestlers. The crowd is probably going to be, I would imagine, more into CM Punk, if only for the that live crowds always want to see a title change,
Yeah.
so they want to be there when CM Punk becomes the champion. But AEW will also want to protect Hangman Page to a certain degree, right? So then you start thinking about, well, what could the finish of this match be? And
Right.
there's so many different scenarios. Like Page could win clean, and then Punk puts him over as the best wrestler currently. Punk could win clean, but then they could face off again sometime. Like probably there will be some type of banana peel type situation that Hangman Page slips on, that Punk wins. But then another scenario which I thought about, I'm not sure if it's that likely, but I thought about it. And it's Punk doing something sort of underhanded, maybe even a little heelish to win the match.
Hmm.
And I don't know if that's likely, but I think it is possible.
Do you think the Forbidden Door pay-per-view has anything to do with your thought on who's going to win. Like if that Forbidden Door pay-per-view wasn't already
Right.
set in stone, I sort of feel like, oh yeah, then Hangman could totally win this, and then they go to the next pay-per-view and possibly do something else. But with the Forbidden Door pay-per-view, that kind of leads me to believe I'm a little bit more on the Punk side. But then again,
Hmm.
maybe that's what Tony Khan wants us to think. And so I'm kind of wondering if that changes the trajectory for you.
Yeah. The Forbidden Door pay per view, I think, is going to factor heavily into this card. I was sort of interested in some of the comments CM Punk made on commentary during Hangman Page's match on Dynamite this week. I haven't heard anybody else talk about this, but after Hangman Page gave Takeshita the GTS,
Mm-hmm.
Punk said the words, "Some people get really mad when you do that move,"
Yeah.
which which I think was directed towards Kenta, wasn't it?
Well, because Kenta's been very aggressive on
Mm-hmm.
social media in trying to get this match, and everything from Punk's side has been like, eh, you know?
No, not into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not like, because Punk did that interview with comicbook.com. They mentioned Kenta calling him out on social media, said, "Are you interested in this match?" And it was just the one word answer, no. And then I thought, okay, well, is this beef, so big that they wouldn't, actually have a match at Forbidden Door? Um, and then I thought, well, maybe Punk is just sort of downplaying that because
Mm-hmm.
he wants people just thinking about his match with Hangman Page and not looking forward to a
Right.
match with Kenta. But then Punk's comments on commentary, he also said that he was the one that popularized the GTS. And he like really put emphasis on the popularized, as in, yeah, there was somebody who did it before me,
Yeah.
but it was popularized by CM Punk. I mean, that again was directed at Kenta. So I wouldn't be shocked at all if a future match between Punk and Kenta factors into this match between Punk and Hangman Page.
But how? Like, you do you
Oh,
think?
I don't know.
Well, okay. So here's another question:
Yeah.
Is do we think there's anybody from the New Japan side who will be part of this pay-per-view will be in Las Vegas this weekend to
Oh, I
kind of
think they
create
absolutely will be.
some
Yeah.
pathway there? That's it. That's
Yeah,
another.
because
That's something that I'm really interested in.
all of the top heavyweights in New Japan are available because they're just doing the best of the Super Juniors right
Right.
now.
Right.
So your top guys like Jay White, Okada, Tanahashi, they don't need to be in Japan until I think a bunch of them are going to be on the June 3rd card, the finals for the best of the Super Juniors. So they're available. And it would make sense to promote your next pay-per-view on this pay-per-view, especially because it's just going to be a month later, which for AEW is a small build. They're used to 3-month builds to their pay-per-view. So I would imagine they have to do something.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. What else? What else on the odds strikes your interest here a little bit?
So the odds on the Jade Cargill and Anna Jay match were interesting to me because there can't be anyone in the world who thinks that Anna Jay is going to win this match.
Yeah.
Nothing against Anna Jay, but Jade Cargill is not losing her first match to Anna Jay. And they've got her listed as a minus 1,600 favorite, which obviously, of course, she's going to be a favorite. But I mean, both Holly Holm and Buster Douglas were longer shots than Anna Jay. And I just don't see any way where Anna Jay wins this match.
All right, we're
So
gonna
that,
bring. We're gonna bring him in. We're gonna stay talking Double or Nothing here in a second, but we're gonna bring in Dave Meltzer to join us on this show. Dave and I are actually on the same flight headed to Vegas, and we didn't plan it that way. It just sort of happened. We're flying out of the same airport, so it just worked out. Dave, what's up?
Not too much. How you doing, Garrett?
Good. So I think the first question on everybody's mind is, how are you with the Observer? And it doesn't sound like you jinxed yourself last night on Wrestling Observer Radio.
The screen froze.
No, you're good. Oh, it did freeze. Okay, we'll bring Dave
Oh.
back when he gets his screen right. Can you hear us, Dave? We really are live, pal. This is
let's
a
just
live
leave his frozen picture
video
up there for a little bit.
Yeah,
And we'll
he'll
try
get
and
back
guess
in.
what Dave is thinking about.
Well, yeah, he'll be back in. You know, one of the things we're gonna do with Dave is I think we're gonna get him a green screen because I think he's gonna be doing a little bit more video for us. So we're getting the video stuff. Oh, there he is, Dave. So
There.
How you doing?
everything's good with the Observer. No, you
Everything's
didn't jinx yourself?
everything's great. Nothing's happened today that jinxed me, so we'll have to
Okay,
wait.
good. So so you and I are flying out. We didn't plan it this way, but we're on the same flight on Friday. And I guess, this whole thing of everyone getting back to Vegas, we get to do another Q&A. You and Brian are back doing a Q&A, doing the whole convention again. I don't know if you know this or if you remember this, but one of the first times that you and I really connected was at one of these conventions. And I want to say it was Randy Savage had passed away not too long before the convention. And we had this giant ballroom dinner, and I think there were prizes given away. And you walked in.
Yep, I remember that. Yeah.
You walked in, and you kind of looked around, and I looked at you, and I just kind of waved, and then you just came right over, and you sat next to me, and we talked for 2 hours. That was I think the first time where I was like, oh
we
yeah,
had we had a long conversation. Yeah, we met before. We met at the Pat Tillman run. Yeah,
yes.
But that was the first time we had a long conversation, and you started coming over. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the Q&A that you and Brian are doing. These Q&As are, you would think that you'd sort of get the same questions over and over and over and over again, but I'm always
that never happens.
No, I'm always fascinated at how smart these questions are. And I guess I shouldn't be, because it just means that you have a pretty smart audience. But then, there's even a surprise. Last time we did it, Chris Harrington showed up. I think
he had a really good question. He was very interesting. He was looking for ideas for international growth, because that's where obviously the company's very far behind WWE when it comes to international growth.
Yeah. And then there was one that we did in San Francisco. There was an ROH. Was it who showed up from ROH?
It was the New Japan show, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the Young Bucks have come by. Joe Koff has come by.
That's
Maybe
who
you're talking about Joe Koff.
Yeah, I think it was
Joe Koff walked in the middle of the thing, and yeah.
So yeah, we'll see. Maybe someone does a run in there. And then also the Q&A, or I'm sorry, not the Q&A, the meet and greet with you and Brian. So if people want to get their stuff signed or just get a picture with Dave and Brian, that will happen at the meet and greet. Okay, so
that might be sold. Is that sold out yet? The last I thought that one was sold out.
Yeah, it might be sold out. Okay, so you mentioned this on Wrestling Observer Radio as well, which is early start for Rampage. So we're literally going to get in. We're going to put our bags down, probably get lunch, and we're already on the way to Rampage because it's such an early start. 3:30?
Right. It's a 3:00 start for the show, and then Rampage itself will start at 3. We'll run from 3:30 to 4:30, which will either be live if there's a Colorado Rockies St. Louis Blues game, or it will be on tape if there is no hockey game, and it would then air at 10 o'clock Eastern, the normal time slot. And then the countdown will air after Rampage. If there is no hockey game, if there is a hockey game, the countdown show will air after the hockey game. So that's the Friday schedule. There's 2 AEW shows Friday as far as TV goes.
Do we know if, it's their last attempt. It's the go-home show to Double or Nothing. Do you expect anything big to happen on that Rampage show?
Yes, I would expect something big to happen. I don't know. No one's told me it. I'm just thinking it's not like I've talked to Tony Khan and he goes, something big's going to happen. But I do kind of know Tony Khan's booking patterns, and you're going to do, you're going to do something big in the final show. That's, Wednesday and Friday. I'm sure that there'll be big promos, it's going to be big hard sell Wednesday and Friday with stuff to build the pay-per-view.
And is there any update on the Paige Van Zant match that I think you said on Sunday that, as far as people know, it's on the card, but was there any update to that?
I mean, I had heard over the weekend, because I'd asked around about Paige, and I was told, she's going to be back soon. But people said, yeah, she's supposed to be in the mixed tag, and they've certainly hinted it on TV. It's the match that they want. Then they said it was off. Then Sammy said, you're going to have to give me the match we want. I mean, it was the match planned. If there was a snafu, that happens, maybe it's changed, or maybe it'll be moved because they have so many matches on the show already. I don't know. But I know it was the match. I know that match was planned for this pay-per-view. Yes.
I wonder if anything gets moved to Friday, like when they sort of time out the show and go, oh, maybe we'll just move this to Friday. You know how WWE does that with WrestleMania,
WWE
where
does that, but
yeah,
they've never done that. Now they could move something to the following Wednesday, I
hmm
suppose. Because you want something big coming off of the pay-per-view. So that's possible, but I don't recall them ever actually moving a match off the pay-per-view. They've, not saying that it will never happen, but they run a lot of pay-per-views and they've never done it yet. So it's not like one of those things where I look at and go, oh, they can always do this. Whereas with WWE, when it comes to WrestleMania, there's always timing issues at WrestleMania because they
yeah.
time it at the last minute. I think Tony doesn't. I think Tony has a better grasp of timing, honestly, than WWE does. That's the difference.
Okay, so we're gonna come back to Double or Nothing because I want to go through some of the matches and get both your and Ian's thoughts on the card. But what's the story? I read somewhere where they were putting together some timelines for The Rock, and someone had written that they think that Rock is fairly open in his movie production schedule for WrestleMania. What have you heard about that?
Nothing new. I mean, same thing I always hear. If he can do it, he'll do it. And no one knows. No one's probably going to know until late this year whether he can or he can't. But I mean, it's sort of the, kind of like the penciled idea of the main event. Yeah.
Because I was looking up, he's got the Black Adam movie coming out, and I was kind of wondering with the release date, and it looks like it's going to be this fall, so that won't be an issue. But and then how does the XFL play into this? You
But
think?
the XFL, yeah. I mean, because he's going to have to train. He's going to have to run the football league. I don't know. It's another thing on his plate, though. That's and a big thing too. Because it's starting February, which
Yeah.
is and the season would be going and they'd be in they'd be in the latter stages of the season or maybe the playoffs at that point. So it would be that would be a big deal, and the XFL could be. I don't know what two spring football leagues. You know what I mean? I just looked at the USFL ratings this morning, and they're not that great to say the
I've not
least.
watched 1 second of USFL football, and I was a giant fan of it when I was a kid. The original USFL with all those college stars who went to the USFL. Yeah, I haven't watched a second of it. It's just hasn't even been on my radar.
The cable ratings are really weak. The NBC, I mean, the network ratings are weak for network ratings, but yeah, I mean, they're low. I mean, the cable ratings are much lower than like NXT, put it that way. I mean, not even in the same ballpark, like less than half. And then the network numbers are, I mean, they're still not very good for network numbers.
But there's a vested interest with Fox, right? Because they
Yeah. They own the league and everything, and they'll probably keep it alive. And again, when you think that the future is live sports, you're going to give the thing a chance to survive. Vince, whatever reason Vince was for bailing early, he didn't see a future in it. That was the thing. And Dwayne saw, a chance. And I don't know, like, again, I'm surprised we don't know the ESPN deal numbers, because obviously if it's successful or not depends almost entirely on that ESPN deal. If they got enough money for it, then they're, whatever. Then he made the deal that WWE couldn't make, because Vince was trying to get money for the league for television, and he was turned down by everyone. Then Dwayne comes in. If Dwayne got decent money for the league, he made a deal Vince couldn't make, and that's the difference between success and failure.
Yeah, I listened to John Oren's podcast from the Sports Business Journal, and I'm waiting for him to tweet something, to say something, because they definitely left that information out of that press release.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one more thing about The Rock. So I'm trying to think of, him being able to tie in WWE to some of these other things that he's doing. XFL, the Young Rock show. I'm not surprised that they picked that show up, but I watched some of those shows that were on the same time as on NBC, and it was my least favorite one. I liked Mr. Mayor and the Keenan Show way better than Young Rock, but they picked up Young Rock. So, do you think there's going to be any synergy with him coming back to WWE, Young Rock, the XFL? It would seem that he could use, part of the deal maybe you know, if I'm going to come back to WWE, like that other stuff needs to be a big part of it.
As far as them promoting his other things, well, first of all, the Young Rock, they will probably promote, but it's hard because Young Rock next season goes head to head with SmackDown, so it's kind of like that makes it real tricky. As far as WWE promoting the XFL as a return for him doing it, I'm sure that they would. I would suspect he would ask for it, and I can't imagine them not saying sure.
All right, Ian and I were talking about some of these odds for Double or Nothing matches, and I'm kind of interested in what you think about CM Punk and Adam Page. CM Punk is -150, Adam Page is a +110, so very close to even odds. If you were to bet, who do you have winning this match?
If I was to bet, I say Punk. If I was to book it, I would say, I think I've talked about this before, I would have Page win the first one and Punk win the second one, you know, and then make the second one enough of a dispute where you come back in Chicago, have the title win in Chicago, because Page would get a lot of credibility for a win. And, you know, Punk should be champion, but I think that I like it better with Page getting the first win. Just because Page is the future of the company, not Punk. So you want to do something, and then, you know, they can go 1-1, and Punk could get his run, because, you know, the Punk run where he wrestles Moxley and Danielson and Kenny Omega and Page again, and, you know, other people. You know, to me, that's a big money run as a champion. But you want to keep, you want Page to be not you know, like a guy who carried the belt, you know, between Omega and Punk, but a guy who, you know, is like a real champion who could win it at any time, that they do it again. Enough of a, you know, I mean, even if he's losing, you know, really work on that finish hard with the idea that he could have won.
If Page wins the first one, when does Punk Page 2 take place? Do you wait to the next pay-per-view? Do you do it before Forbidden Door?
I would for sure do it in Chicago if All Out is in Chicago. If All Out is not in Chicago, I would wait until, you know, then I would probably do Revolution you know, maybe Revolution in Chicago or Full Gear in Chicago. Whenever the next Chicago pay-per-view date is, would be the date I would do it. And I think, I mean, again, the tradition is All Out. He wants to keep tradition up. So, but you know, they haven't confirmed All Out for Chicago. But if you go with the idea that it will be Chicago, that would be the show that I would have him win it at.
Okay. And you would think that they would have to run the bigger building for that show, right? If that's your main event.
Yeah, I would think so too. I don't think that there will be any what's the word I'm looking for? You know, you don't want the ill will of leaving the market, but I don't think that there will be and the tradition. But I think if you move the tradition from the Now Arena to the United Center, especially since the company has grown, and make the tradition the United Center, I don't think that anyone in Chicago is going to complain about, you know, well, you know what I mean? Like, we have this tradition here and you ruined it. You know, it's still Chicago market. So, but yes, if they do that, I would say book the United Center too.
All right, so looking at this card, we're going to have so many different shows to kind of preview the matches and such. I'm kind of interested in both of your opinions on what the match of the night may be. Now, I was surprised to hear Brian Alvarez say he thought House of Black and Death Triangle could be the match of the night. I'm not surprised because of, you know, I think that match is going to be good, but when you have Hangman and Punk on this show, I'm like, man, for House of Black and Death Triangle to be better than that's a high bar. But Dave, what do you think will be the best match on this show, or at least the one that has piqued your interest the most?
The main event would probably have my most interest, and it could be the best match because, you know, Punk is going to, you know, probably work as hard as he can, and Page is very, very talented, and you got the high stakes. When I look on paper, I mean, the two matches that I kind of think might be the best might be the 10-man Anarchy match or the tag team title 3-way, because I look at the tag team title 3-way and just the way those people match up. Now, it may not have the interest level, so it may not get the heat of the other ones, but I look at those participants and the way that they match up and bounce off each other and things, and I think that you could put together an incredible match because of the talent of the guys. The the Young Bucks and Hardys, the Young Bucks are always in contention for a best match when it's on a pay-per-view. And the question is what do the Hardys have left? But the other one, the Anarchy match, I mean, you got Moxley and Danielson and Eddie Kingston and Jericho's pretty much a genius when it comes to match layout. And I think that there's a lot, when you have that kind of match, it'll either be unwieldy and too much because they don't rein it in, or it will be an absolutely outstanding match because of the talent of enough of the guys in there. So those would be the other matches. But I mean, I look at that show and most of the show looks really, really, really good. And like the Death Triangle match should be, a sensational match. They've already done it. We've already seen it once. It was great then. Without Phoenix, you add Phoenix to that match. That only is elevating the match.
So I was actually wondering about that Anarchy match. And I think I mentioned this to you on Wrestling Observer Radio. That's going to be a match that I'm going to have to go back and figure out to watch on television because live, I imagine there's going to be several different things going on around the ring or outside, and it's going to be, I'm kind of anxious, like going, oh man, what am I going to pay attention to? Like I'm going to miss stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that may be a match that I just, you know what, I'm going to have to go back and watch it on TV. But do you think because of the fact that they have so much talent, the way that they've created matches for this card is like a lot of multiple person matches, they're 10 people in one match. I understand why, but I kind of wonder, like, is this going to be what they have to do to get all of these people on these shows is, less one-on-one matches except for the most important ones. And then we're just sort of combining people into storylines that make sense. But, we just have to have all these multi-person matches so that we get all of these folks on TV.
Yes. Well, on the pay-per-view. Yes. Well, look, FTR's not on the pay-per-view, and so yeah, there's and they've got 2 sets of tag team titles, and they, they've had some of the hottest matches, that one week where they had those 2 great tag team matches. So it's like, yeah, there's way too much talent for one pay-per-view. I mean, they're actually, and I'm not suggesting this, I don't think this is the right thing for them. Although at some point it may be where you do the WWE WrestleMania thing and you do the weekend where you do the Saturday and the Sunday pay-per-view, maybe for one of the pay-per-views a year, and then you really load up. I mean, because they have a roster where you can pull that off. Better than WWE, really, when it comes to a roster to be able to do a deep show of great matches. And so that may be something down the road. But yeah, I mean, you're going to have people, that are top guys not on the pay-per-view, because there is so much talent on that roster.
I want to give Ian a chance to ask a question.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you mentioned that like FTR isn't going to be on the show, but I wanted to know what you think like we're going to see in terms of promoting the Forbidden Door pay-per-view for next month. Are we going to see some New Japan guys show up to help promote that show?
You mean surprise run-ins and stuff? I hope so.
Yeah, something like that.
Let me see.
And they're really good at that, right? They're excellent.
Yeah, I mean, if in a perfect world, when that show is over, you should know 2 or 3 of the top matches for Forbidden Door. So yeah, like if Punk wins, should Tanahashi, Okada, Takagi, somebody walk on stage?
Kenta, maybe.
Yes. Kenta, if it's whatever, if Kenta's healthy. And if Paige wins, should somebody walk on stage? Yeah, like a top New Japan guy walk on stage at the end of the show. Absolutely, 100%. I don't know if they've worked that out, but yes. And in the tag team situation, should that happen? Yeah, I mean, you should have, maybe after the 10-man tag, somebody comes out and challenges Danielson, like Zach or something. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know, but whatever matches they have lined up, they should have like the top 3 or 4 of them teased on the pay-per-view. I mean, if it's at all possible, and I mean, they absolutely should do that. Yes.
Yeah. The other thing was, sorry,
go ahead.
We saw kind of an angle there with Fish and O'Reilly and Sting and Darby Allin. Is there anything maybe listed for them being added to the show?
No, but that's another one. You know, you got right now. You have no Darby Allin match. You have no Fish
Yeah.
and O'Reilly match, unless O'Reilly ends up in the finals of the Owen Hart thing. But obviously, that match will happen and probably on TV. I don't see it on Forbidden Door, and going to All Out seems to be too long. So I think that maybe
Yeah.
that's building for a television match.
All right, so business indicators for this show, how well we think this show is going to do. Obviously, the sort of the peak was All Out, like when it came to interest and all of the surprises kind of bubbling at the right time. But do you still feel like they're at the point in pay-per-view where, growth and we don't have really a great comparison to last year, because that was still I think that was the first show out of the pandemic, right, where they finally were able to have the live fans there at the outdoor place. But do you have any sense of where you expect this show to be pay-per-view buys wise?
Some of it depends on if there's an NBA game on that day, because that would hurt if there is. But I mean, I kind of feel about the same as the last one, which was 170, which was a good number. So I guess if I'm going to guess, the last one was so great on paper and ended up being so great as far as match quality goes. But this one does have a pretty strong main event. I mean, granted, Punk and MJF was a big grudge, but this is Punk going for the championship. So again, I feel it should be as strong as the last one. Maybe it'll even be stronger, but my gut is, yeah, if you're going to ask me like a number, I'm going to guess 170.
And then what was the last show?
170.
Okay, and then what was All Out?
205.
Okay, so I mean that's still a very, very strong number. Okay, so folks who are going to be in Las Vegas with us, can't wait to see all of you and meet some new folks. Andrew and I are going to do a pre-suite party episode of We're Live, Pal. We don't have a set time yet, but just stay tuned to whatever social media channels and our Twitters and everything, and you will find that out. But thank you, Dave, for doing this. Thank you, Ian, for being the co-host here and for jumping in. And I think you filled Andrew's shoes, except for the hair part. I think you filled them extremely well. But yeah, so thank you to both of you. I'm Double G. We'll see you in Vegas. Peace out.